All right, welcome everybody. Thank you all for coming. We are delighted to have you all here. It's funny, we're here to introduce you to the Journal of Law and Innovation. But I have, just so you know, this is one part of what we think of as a very active technology law program we have here at Penn Cary Law. And just to give you just some inkling of what's coming up, and I'll touch on these at the end, as a preview, we are doing the Penn Cary Law Antitrust Association Symposiums tomorrow is all day, featuring both Tim Wu as the opening keynote and the number 2 person in the Antitrust Division at DOJ, Doha Mekki, who's also one of our alums, as the next speaker. Career speaker on February 21st, next week, which is Maya Nayak, who's the Deputy Chief Privacy Officer at Penn Medicine. February 27th, AI and Climate Change with Tapio Schneider from Caltech. And something that's just new, Lena Khan, the chair of the Federal Trade Commission, will be coming on March 19th to do a fireside chat. And so, by the way, when that comes, if you're interested, I encourage you to register as soon as it shows, because in the experience of other schools, we'll do it in the auditorium, and when it's out, when we're sold out, we're sold. When it's fully subscribed, we're done. And so, and every year, we had this tentatively scheduled in the fall, and it did. So just so you're here, be forewarned. Anyway.
And we expect that'll go out Monday.
It's going out Monday, so keep your eyes open. Anyway, but more importantly, we're here to talk about the Journal of Law and Innovation, which we think is a very special part of what we do here. And it's one of these things which was started, we're now on volume 7, and it's been a very exciting central part of, I think, the student experience here. So you may ask, what is the Journal of Law and Innovation? So what it is unlike, it's very different from the rest of the journals, which is, it is a faculty-led seminar in the fall on a different topic that rotates every year of current interest in law and technology. And then we hold a symposium usually in late January or early February that brings together, that builds on the topics you taught in the fall on that area. And we have a symposium with authors, and the spring is devoted to editing the papers presented at the symposium into a volume that's produced at the end. One of the great things about this is that makes it so unusual is, unlike the other journals, the student-led journals, where it's entirely with very minimal contact with faculty, if any. This is one of the things that was very exciting to the administration when we organized it, is the chance to get the kind of deep ties, interaction with faculty. In addition, there's a great deal of substantive interaction with the authors, the editing process that goes along with the traditional journal. But because it's taught as a class, it is also possible to be part of the Journal of Law and Innovation and other journals simultaneously. Why? Because in addition to it gives you, you don't have to do 2 journals, which would be a lot of workload, because one of them is a class, it relieves that part of the workload that you would normally go, and it's actually very possible for people to do it. And in fact, you'll get 2 graded credits in the fall, and the 2 in the spring when you're editing the journal are ungraded. So at a very high level, that's the nature of it. And just to give you some sense of the topics we've done in the past, this year's topic is on antitrust and digital platforms. We've done space. Professor Wagner has done innovation in a time of crisis. We've looked at role of the state in innovation policy, which is to me everything but intellectual property. It's like this was subsidies, tax policy, different things, smart contracts in the digital era, and the first one on links between copyright and patent law. I've had the privilege of teaching it several times, and Professor Wagner has too. I'd love to hear your thoughts about the experience with JLI.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I would agree with everything that Professor Yu has said, which is it's a little bit of a different journal experience than you'll get at a different journal, in part because you will work on a particular topic or fairly narrow range of topics of interest to law and technology, and you get a chance to work quite closely, especially in the fall semester with the faculty members at CTIC, and have a lot of say over how the journal runs also, right? So it's also a very student-driven organization at the same time. So it's a nice hybrid between sort of a traditional class and a journal, and I think has really added a lot to our law and technology program here.
What's interesting is, it's something kind of, just to jump ahead a little bit on the slides, it's something, in addition to the actual work of the journal in the class, we support a social budget that goes along with it for team building activities. And it's really become a focal point for students interested in law and technology here at Penn Cary Law. And this is something that when we created the journal we hoped for, but you never know how they're going to gel. And it's really been every year remade as one of these sort of seminal experiences where people who are interested in these fields come together, find each other, interact with each other in a very, very positive way. And so actually this is a good point to introduce the two editors-in-chief of the journal, just to have them say a few words, because you can hear me say that, but I think it means more coming from the students who are actually doing it. This is Shashank Sirivolu and Melanie Amrikawa.
Hello all, thank you for being here. So Shashank and I will give some brief remarks about the journal from a board member's perspective, because we will have 3 other associate members that will give you more of the 2L experience, which is what you will all be having. So I have been a part of the Journal of Law and Innovation since I went on here. We applied, like you all will do, this coming spring, and it started with taking internet law with Professor Yu. At the time, the EIC of the Journal of Law and Innovation was our TA, and so we had, kind of an influence, but I would say that the journal, to what Professor Yu has already mentioned, is kind of the hub for innovation and tech people and students at the law school, and so through being in the journal, you get to engage, even if the topic, for example, last year's topic was space law. I'm personally not super interested in space or the stuff that we were actually discussing in class, but I found it really interesting, and we had amazing speakers that came in. We had someone that came from, who had formerly worked for Elon Musk and SpaceX, and we heard about his experiences, and just being involved in the journal really gives you great access to CTIC and its professors. One of these photos, that one in the corner, is from a happy hour where it's about 20 people max, and it's mostly professors, and so you get to really engage with them and develop these relationships with them, whether you want to work with them on a paper or do research for them. This is a great opportunity to get your foot in the door. In addition to that, with the way that JLI works compared to other journals, most other journals will give you 1 credit for the work that you're doing, and the work is really, really extensive. I was on JCL and JLI, and the amount of work that I had to do for JCL was mostly edits, and while edits are really helpful for understanding and learning how to Blue Book, they don't really translate to anything else. Versus in JLI, we were doing readings, we were writing brief papers on what we had read, we were presenting, we were developing a lot of skills that I felt translated beyond just doing Blue Booking, which you don't really need if you're not going to be writing articles, and even then, you'll probably have a student doing that for you. So the long-term value of knowing how to Blue Book, it's really not there, versus the knowledge and the skills that you develop in JLI are significantly higher. In addition to that, you do get 4 credits, and so that really frees up your schedule to do a lot of other things. For me, I have taken that extra time to write and produce articles and comments. We've also introduced a comment option this year. So hopefully next year's board, AK, maybe some of these folks will continue that on next year so that you have an opportunity to write on something that's interesting and innovative. And in addition to that, we introduced a comment option because JLI is constantly picking the most up-to-date and innovative topics. The likelihood of your comment being more impactful and read is significantly higher than if you write something, for example, in constitutional law, which has a zillion professors and students who have been studying this for ages. There's a lot more literature and work on that rather compared to what we do in JLI. So I'll give it to Shashank to fill in.
Sure. Not much more to add there. I think there's 2 things that make JLI unique for me at Penn Cary Law. Number one, it sort of is the scholarly home of the law and technology conversation amongst the students here. And I think that's very true with what Melanie has said. We have a student comment process. We have active conversations in class concerning new areas of law and technology that sort of inspire writing, whether it's in our journal or in other journals. So it's definitely an area where you can sort of delve into those interests in a sort of a scholarly angle, which I don't think many other organizations here at the law school necessarily do when it comes to law and technology. Number 2, it really is a conversation. So Melanie and Professor Yu touched on this, but the way our class is structured for the fall semester is, in many ways, it's sort of like a round table, right? We have topics that we're discussing throughout the course of the semester. However, there really is a emphasis on input, and There's a back and forth in the class itself. Professor Yu obviously facilitates that, but I think there is a lot of new input, new insights, new thoughts that kind of come about when we're discussing these topics throughout the course of a semester. And I think by the end of it, we feel a little bit more. We feel like we have a little bit more dexterity with the topic, whether it's antitrust or space law, and perhaps it may even inspire some scholarship of your own as well. So I think that's all I have. But we have our wonderful 2Ls here, who are current associate editors, and they would love to speak about their experience as well.
So I brought a list of reasons why I think JLI is so great. And if it's any indication, super easy to put the list together. But first and foremost, the main reason why I drew the journal in the first place was because of OCI, or really kind of any 2L position that you're looking for. And kind of like picture this, you're in your 40th OCI interview, and for the 40th time you're asked, why aren't you on a journal? I don't really think you want to answer that question, So once I decided that I wanted to be on a journal, I was really making 2 journals. And one was the Journal of Law and Innovation, and the other was Law Review. And kind of the plan was to write on for both, edit for both, as a 2L. And, no surprise, I am only on one journal. So didn't make it onto the other one, but, I spoke to a bunch of 2Ls. I even, I have a bunch of peers, in my grade that are on both, 2 journals, whether that be JLI and Law Review or JLI and another journal. And, one of the best things I think about JLI, and as mentioned previously, is the workload is incredibly manageable. As seen my peers, my colleagues on 2 journals, and even after talking to the 2Ls, right, it's super manageable to be on 2 journals. So I say, if you have any interest in technology, absolutely shoot your shot with JLI, and then you can go do the writing competition afterwards. And if you make it onto both, great. I think it's extremely manageable, and you can do it. And in terms of that manageable content, one other thing that's really great is the content is super interesting. I've had a background kind of in technology, right? And I came to law school thinking like, oh my God, everyone's going to be involved in tech. That's what, is driving business, it's driving the world. And I was a little, I guess surprised, right, by the lack of interest in technology. So when I found JLI and I found CTIC and Professor Yu at Internet Law, I was like, whoa, this opened up a whole world of opportunities. Yeah, I was like, wow, this is what I came to law school for. And it's been a ton of great opportunities, through talking to other professors, talking to the former chairman of the FTC at dinner, to even finding my internship with Professor Yu at the FCC for my 1L with Commissioner Simonton. So it's been a really fantastic experience. And kind of the last point I'd say is quite great is the community. You have a community of a bunch of people who are also interested in law and technology. And I think some of the best advice that you get in law school is from your peers because they've done it before. So I think joining JLI, if you have any interest in technology, you want to be on a journal, it's an absolute no-brainer. And feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions.
I would second all of that, and it's great to see some familiar faces from Internet Law. I would say that for me, one of the things that really sticks out from my JLI experience this last semester is just the unique way of getting to interact with scholarship. Something that, at least from the seminar, felt very different for me compared to other classes is the fact that you're reading a lot of scholarship and also get this opportunity to be writing about it in pretty free-form ways, which isn't something I got in my other classes. So if the structure stays the same from the way it was last year, we got to write 3 response papers. That totally had no problem. Professor Yu really was just like, yeah, whatever comes to mind, feel free to use it creatively. I had some ideas that I thought were better than others, but just being able to try a few new things. And then in addition to that, in the semester, each student gets to give a 20-minute presentation on their reaction to one of the pieces they read or a new idea that they had, and then you workshop that both with whoever's leading the seminar and other students. And that for me is just something that I still, even this semester, haven't had in my other classes, so feels pretty unique in that way. And then kind of just repeating the theme that other people mentioned as well, which is you're in this class, a seminar, a lot of students, just getting to interact with your classmates in other ways and learning from each other. It feels so different from the 1L experience of kind of being in a doctrinal class. So it's been a great opportunity for me, and I imagine a lot of you will enjoy it as well.
Hi everyone, my name is Jonathan. I'm a 2L. I think that JLI is Penn's best opportunity for you as a student to become tech law literate. And that's coming from someone who's taken a lot of certain IP courses, internet law. I say that because in some of these other courses, they're broad courses, right? And they talk about a lot of the history, a lot of the science, a lot of kind of the development of aspects. But JLI and having the seminar faculty run is your opportunity to really, really understand what is happening right now. And so that means that you can supplement all the IP courses, all the other kind of courses that you're taking with JLI. So that's one of the biggest aspects of JLI that I think was extremely fulfilling for me. I think another thing was that this has to be one of the most substantive classes and groups I've been a part of. And what I mean by that is that when I was a 1L taking con law, like I would read something and I would think, okay, well this seems kind of dumb, or like this is really confusing. And maybe I'd text one of my friends like, hey, did you understand what Lernahan was saying or what Justice Roberts was saying? And they say, well, I don't know because they use this language. And so you kind of get on a rant. In this opportunity, in this journal, because there's a specified topic, and the topics are new, they're innovative, they're on the forefront, you get to read all of the cutting edge scholarship. You get to discuss and have the insights from folks like Professor or Professor Wagner come in and talk about their insights of it. And then through the response papers, through the presentations, you get to essentially just rant about what you want the United States government to do, what you would want litigation to move forward in. And so it's really, really a great opportunity to have substantive conversations, not only with faculty, but also with your peers. And that's something that I don't really see a lot in the other journals, let's say for con law or business law. They've got interesting topics, they've got interesting and amazing scholarship, no doubt. But when it comes down to just discussing the topics, I don't see that. I don't see that a lot. Whereas amongst our group, even if we really, really don't like a piece of legislation or a case or something like that, in our off time, we're still thinking about it. Why? Because we're all interested in this tech space. We're all interested. We all have a vested interest in it. And so even if we don't like it, we're having our own conversations. We're texting each other about why we don't like this or what we would want to change. And that's something that I didn't find in some of my other classes, and that's something that I didn't find in talking with other people who are on other journals. And so I think that joining JLI not only gets you to that point if you're interested in the intersection of tech and law, but it's an opportunity for you to have actual substantive conversations. And even in the office hours I've had with Professor Yu, because he was the faculty teacher for this past semester, I would go in and I would say, I don't understand this concept. Can you explain this to me? And sure, there's room and opportunity for that in other classes, but it was extremely fulfilling for me to be able to read cutting edge pieces of scholarship, be able to have conversations with faculty and conversations with my peers. And then the second half of the semester, or the second half of the year, the second semester, is you're able to really dig into the scholarship. And kind of like what was mentioned, con law or business law, you've got these kind of, not necessarily esoteric, but they're very focused articles. The articles that come to JLI, they have a focus, but they're things that we've talked about for a whole semester. And so a couple of weeks ago, we had the symposium in which the authors came, they presented their scholarship, and we were sitting there. And I can assure you that if I was on con law and they had some of the professors come and talk about their scholarship, I would not know anything of what they're saying. But I was able to sit there and still kind of understand and track. And when someone would say a point that maybe referenced a reading that we did, I would think, oh, I remember having that conversation. I remember looking at that piece of legislation and being like, yeah, that is kind of weird. Why do they do it that way? Shouldn't they do it in a different way? And so again, the two big things, the first is this is the best opportunity for you to, if you're interested in the intersection of tech and law, to be able to have substantive conversations in class. But then second of all, to have a community of other students and of faculty so that you could actually have those ongoing conversations and still be in that world so that you don't have to wait until after graduating to then, okay, now I'm a tech or IP lawyer, and now I have this conversation. No, you can start right now. So that's it. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me too.
One of the things that you're saying, Jonathan, really strikes me is that, one thing about the first year curriculum is they tend to be surveys, and then, let's put it this way, tort and contract, I bet the class you had was pretty much the same one we had, a long time ago. And there's a way that law seems very static and it's about rules and you learn them, and yes, we have to learn those things. But when we started teaching in the 90s, the internet was brand spanking new.
I'm much younger than you, Chris.
You wish that were truer than it actually is.
In the aughts, right?
But the thing is, where lawyers live is not where you can look things up in books. It's when you have new technological developments, which back then was internet and now probably is AI and other things that are moving along, we try to figure out how are we going to deal with this? And those, they're not research projects. They're thinking projects. And so having that sort of, in a sense, what Jonathan's talking about is a chance to introduce you to the way you'll actually live as a practicing lawyer who's interested in technology as a constantly moving target. And to me, it's a nice chance. You're going through a phase shift in your education from sort of large, fact-based, case-based, historically oriented survey courses to having the chance to delve more deeply into topics the way a graduate education should progress. And I think that JLI, for people who are interested in the space, is a uniquely powerful place to get that done. Anything else to add, Professor Wagner?
No, I think that's good.
All right.
Answer any questions people have.
So before we get into that, let's get into the guts of this. So one of the mechanical things about this is that the application process for this journal, because it is not a traditional student-run journal, is different. As you know, or I hope you know, or you probably heard, that the journal competition for all the other journals happens in a unified way right after exams, and you essentially get picked by one journal. This journal process will happen before then. So it happens where we will distribute the application materials prior to spring break. And that, in fact, are they ready now? Or
They're about to be ready.
they're about to be ready, so in almost any day. And in fact, what we'll do then is ask you to, and we'll make them available, and we will the deadline is at least a week and change after spring break. So you don't have to, for people who want to do it over spring break or you have some spare time, you can do that, but at the same time, you don't have to do it then. We try to give you some flexibility to make that work. But the goal is to have you submit in March, the deadline March 24th, and you will get an answer before the journal competition begins for all the other journals in May. You will know whether you're on this journal or not. And so you can actually then make your decisions accordingly. And basically, for the first time, we're doing something interesting this year. We're actually giving you one of the articles, or an excerpt from one of the articles that they're editing right now. So if you want to see how this is really done, you're going to see an imperfect article with all its warts, and we're going to ask you to give feedback to authors the way that editors actually do when they edit journals. And this is a real-world exercise. It's not a mock exercise. And in fact, we'll take advantage of this opportunity and use the input you get to improve the article as much as possible. And so, in fact, we look at that. We also look at your overall law school performance. We're going to ask you, and try to get people who are really interested in the space, both reflected in your course selection, in terms of your extracurricular activities, as the kind of people who would really be excited, contribute to the class, and get a great deal from it. And then, we do look at that you take at least one class from a CTIC faculty member, either as one of the electives, either Intro to IP now or one of the classes, or at least commit to doing that in the coming year while you're a member. And then we're actually asking all the students to write a statement of interest of why you're interested in the journal. And this is not intended to be anything particularly hard, maybe a paragraph, just jot down your thoughts off the top of your head, but just to get a sense of what you're thinking, why are you engaged in it, what draws you to the idea, just to give us more of an idea. And so this will happen. We'll give you a model memo and a format for what it's supposed to be. It's not intended to be a very heavy lift, but it's intended to reveal something about yourself, your qualities as an editor, and also as a person who'd be participating in the seminar, and we try to understand how that works. All right? And so we're pretty excited about this. That will happen fairly shortly. And for additional information, we have contact information here. for the two co-EICs, for Caroline Olson, who if you haven't met her as CTIC Managing Director, you should, because she will help you in so many ways. It's not even, I can't even tell you. There is a JLI website, which we encourage you to take a look if you want to get an idea of how this is going. And we're delighted to answer any questions you might have about the journal, about the experience, about the process, or I guess anything you want to ask Professor Wagner about.
Do you guys have like a short list of topics that could be the topic for next year?
So this is all kind of fluid because it's a matter of how things work. So I would say, unlike previous years, we have a better idea of who's going to teach it. Because sometimes we're still fiddling with curriculum at this point. You're in my class now, Ms. Buckland. I don't know how this is going to cut, but I'm like 99% likely, if not 100% likely to get started. Okay, so that's one.
For better or worse.
For better. or
Right.
worse.
The rush to the door.
Yeah, yeah. So the topic is kind of in a weird set of flux. I don't think we can say it's for sure what it's going to be. I think
Don't commit.
not commit. But the answer is it'll be something that's current today that's interesting. You know, and okay, the very first time we did it, Dave, Professor Hoffman and Professor Wilkinson Ryan taught it on smart contracts.
Bob Ganesh first.
The first one was
first
the
one was
patents and copyright.
patent copyright interface, which we all did.
Yeah.
But the first one that was taught as a seminar, the way in the current mold,
Yeah.
was about smart contracts. And this is particularly at a time when blockchain and everything was red hot before the sort of the crypto bubble popped and all this. And what I would say, students were surprised that they weren't necessarily thinking, they didn't go in thinking, oh, that's exactly what I want to do, but they were shockingly engaged by the subject matter. And it's a nice lens to bring up a lot of different topics. You know, my personal feeling and how I think about this, tech law, there are about 10-ish major concepts that show up constantly that pose themselves in different permutations that I think tech law people need to know. And it kind of doesn't matter how they arise, but when you get them, they come up in sort of live, real-time policy making, how are you going to deal with this discussions that are a nice implementation that works pretty well no matter what you do. And so, I mean, when you taught it, you did it appropriately on COVID.
Yeah, because that was the year that we were all online. But yeah,
Yeah.
we did innovation in a time of crisis. So we did all kinds of things about intellectual property law and how it works to stimulate sort of emergency activities. So yeah, no, it was good. I think, you know, in terms of topics, it's not something that I think that we know right now. But I think any topic you're going to find to be interesting, relevant, and exciting. You know, the idea would be that many of you would join the journal and stay on also for a second year, and then, you know, the second year would be a different year. Right? So you basically have two years of topics to get at. I don't know. I mean, the students might have something to say about whether the topic sort of met, you know, what they wanted, or whether, you know, sort of any topic in the law and tech space is really something that's probably more interesting than you're going to get in any of the other journals.
And one thing that I didn't, I guess, make clear, what happened, the journal, there's about 23, I can't remember the exact number of 2Ls that are members of the staff right now. They will then apply, they become the applicants for board positions, where there are actually about half a dozen, 6, 7 on the formal executive board, and there's who have former editor positions, but there's another 4 or so people who are just editing and become contributing members as 3Ls. And so you have the ability to continue. The students who are actively part of the board are offered the opportunity to take the seminar a second time. And because the topic changes, you can actually stay engaged in that. It is not something, it is restricted to people who are staying with the journal. So, I mean, but in a sense, in addition to doing the journal as a 2L, you will be, from the membership of the ones in this room who become part of the journal next year, will become the leadership of the journal 2 years from now, as is natural. So, and that's a process, but you know, it's actually been, it's kind of fun getting to watching the board work together. I think you guys have worked together extraordinarily well.
And they've done an amazing job.
Oh.
And I will add that as members on the Journal 2L year, you you will talk with Professor Yu or the professor that's leading it, and there is some say in what the next topic will be. You don't get the ultimate choice, but you can suggest things. And so if you're like, oh, I didn't really love the topic my 2L year, but I'd love to stay on 3L year with a different topic, that is something that you get some choice and influence over.
Right. Yeah, like the year I did it, the topic was chosen through, meetings over the summer with myself and the executive board. We basically chose it together. So.
I love that topic. I actually ended up in that volume.
Yeah.
Because I was writing about how different apps that were tracking, COVID tracking apps invaded people's privacy. And now when I teach privacy, we talk about the number of privacy laws that were waived under exigency and how fit for purpose privacy law was to accommodate an emergency where we actually needed to share information at a level which we never really had. And it wasn't a time for turning really nice corners on negotiating all these contracts with every provider you ever had to make sure that all worked. And it was actually a very interesting, I think it was a fascinating topic to think about how things like COVID put pressure on legal regimes and were they fit for purpose.
Right.
Anyway, just try to.
If you fill out an application, is that a commitment to join if you're selected?
No. So what will happen is every year there is some, what I call melt. Oddly enough, some of the people who have the hardest trouble are joint degree students because they have a first year required curriculum the next year that they can't change. I mean, and they really have no flexibility. It's not a commitment. It's an option. I would say maybe 1 or 2 every fall. Find some conflict that just can't be resolved, and we understand. On those occasions, we have, for good purpose, if a student really wanted to do the journal but had a conflict the fall of their second year, we allowed them to serve as an editor in the spring semester and then take the seminar in the fall of their 3L year as a staff member, not obviously as a board member because they'd never done the whole experience. And that's an accommodation we've been able to extend to several students to make sure they have that experience, even though they have a conflict in the fall.
But the bottom line is applying is not committing you to anything.
Showing up for this lunch is committing.
Exactly. You've already fully committed. It's done.
Other questions? Right. Well, we, I hope that we give you some sense. This is really a very, I think, one of my favorite parts of this whole program. And in fact, one of the commitments we have here is you see a lot of research programs at law schools, including this one, where there's a faculty component without student engagement, which is there's some scholarship going on, and they have their own set of conferences. And even though that we have some of the world's best experts on a field, it doesn't really affect the students or benefit the students in the same way. You see the reverse as well. You see student programs which are very active, which have virtually no connection with faculty whatsoever. And one of the commitments we have at CTIC is that's a missed opportunity. That we think the best sort of experiences integrate students and faculty in ways and allow them to interact at a level that really benefits, I think, the entire program, at teaching and research and everything. And to me, JLI is probably the cornerstone or the epitome of what we're trying to do with that. And I think that, in Professor Wagner's emerging responsibilities as Deputy Dean in charge of curriculum matters, these are kinds of experiences we're trying to encourage because they're all too rare.
Yeah. I mean, I think JLI is a really important piece of the CTIC overall and the Law and Tech program, which I think is really unique at Penn Law. I think it's just incredible that, if you're interested in law and technology at Penn and you are involved and engaged in, whether it's JLI or PIPG or any of the other sort of activities that we do here as part of our Law and Tech program, when you're a 3L, Caroline and, there is no other research program where students interact with the managing director of the research program the way that we do. This is entirely unique to CTIC. And, you need help getting, a room or lunch for a program. That's the kind of things that can be made much easier, and just the sort of community that we have here for CTIC, I think, is quite different. And JLI is a really important piece of that, and I think I agree with the students that it's really, in some sense, the real sort of intellectual center of a lot of what the students who are interested in law and technology do.
The one thought I'll leave you, the last thing I'll say, I'm struck by Melanie's comment that we're doing comments for the first time. And that was an idea that came out of the current leadership in the board. We're only 7 years in. We're still reinventing this as we go. And so the other thing that's part of it is it's an active opportunity to actively shape one of the seminal experiences here. And we're looking forward to having you hopefully all want to be part of it. And we look forward to hopefully seeing your applications in March. And if you have any further questions, we'll hang around down here and we're happy to answer them. All right. Thank you for coming.
There's information on our CTIC's Summer Public Interest Fellowship.
Oh yeah, we should say that out loud. Like if you are interested in doing public interest this summer and it's in the area of law and technology, thought pretty broadly, you should consider applying for one of the CTIC fellowships, which will basically subsidize your summer public interest activities.
Yeah, we fund multiple students depending on
so
right.
it's an application process. I think it's due, what, March 1st or something?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So there's papers down here about the details. But if you're planning as a 1L to do some public interest this summer, and it's anywhere in the sort of general law and tech area, then by all means fill out a form because that's what the money is for. So.